Hello, my name is Achyut Venkatesh.
And my name is Vishwasis.
We are from grade 11 from National Hillview Public School, Bangalore. And we are going to be talking about enhancing cold chain efficiency and discussing strategies and plans on how to improve cold chain efficiency. So, why we are taking up this topic is because we want to combat food wastage, and food wastage is one of the biggest contributors to global warming, as it's a big issue and is causing a lot of economic impacts for the world. The first thing we would like to talk about is fruits and vegetables, as they occupy the biggest margin when it comes to food wastage. So here in this graph, we can see that in 2012 to 2013, all the agricultural produce in India, and the ones given here are the ones that are undergoing the most amount of wastage. So here the percentage loss of the total produce is given, and as you can see, for certain key examples like tomato, soybean and apples, the wastage is almost at 9%, which is out of the many hundred tons that are produced every year, this is still a very significant amount. While this has been reduced from 2005 to 2007, it is still very significant, and we still need to look into ways that we can resolve this issue. So this is a more detailed graph that explains which fruits and vegetables are being wasted the most. And as you can see, potatoes, apples and onions occupy the biggest margin out of all the other fruits and vegetables. This graph here shows us a detailed study on all the countries and regions of the world and how loss and wastage of fruits and vegetables are at different stages in the value chain. So in South and Southeast Asia, where India falls under, you can see that out of the total tons of food that is wasted, the biggest mass is occupied by lack in proper facilities in transformation and packaging. And the second biggest margin is in agricultural production, that is the post-harvest cycle and other aspects before it reaches a cold storage facility. So in avoidable food waste throughout the world, 65% is occupied by only fruits and vegetables, which stresses the impact on why we need to focus on preserving fruits and vegetables, as they are produced on a daily basis, and a lots of fruits and vegetables are perished because of this very reason. So now coming to the main part. How can we actually combat wastage of fruits and vegetables? Well, we have to use, as we said, the process of the cold chain. But before we get to that, there is one major issue that we need to talk about. The thing is, before we get to a cold storage, before we transport all the fruits and vegetables to the cold storage, there is a risk of losing them before we reach that very stage. And how we reach this stage is through pre-cooling. So as seen here, scientists discovered quickly that extracting the field heat from freshly picked produce immediately after the harvest prevents the growth of microbes that hasten the process of decay, and this extends the shelf life of fruits and vegetables, improving their quality. This mission critical process is called pre-cooling, and this is followed by immediate transfer to cold storage and transportation in refrigerated trucks, and this is a critical component of what is called as the cold chain. So any delays within this chain of events risk spoilage of the product. For every hour of delay in a freshly harvested commodity into a temperature controlled environment, a day of shelf life is lost. So this is the magnitude of loss that we can see, and this stresses the fact that the process of maintaining the cold chain starts with pre-cooling, and pre-cooling starts with the very onset of the harvest. So right now, most cooling facilities are small operations which are privately owned by the growers and shippers for their own use, and of 2,000 cold storage facilities in India, more than half date back to 1970s or earlier, and most of them are abandoned today, but with investor capital, they can become cutting edge consolidation centers. So now I would like to pass it on to Vishwas and he would talk about the issues with the current supply chain.
Now that we've established just how much of a problem this is, how much economic loss, how much food wastage, the gap in the cold chain from the farm to the cold storage causes, let's take some time to exactly pinpoint where and how these losses occur. So the supply chain as it operates in today's globalized world can be split into four parts or stages, whatever you call them. The first one is production, whether it be agricultural or animal production. The production in a farm is its own separate phase. And next we have processing and packaging. For fruits and vegetables, this can involve ripening, sorting them into different grades of quality, and finally packing them into boxes. And thirdly, we have distribution, which is primarily the transportation phase. And fourthly, the very last stage when it ends up on the plate of the consumer. So as you can see these statistics, 32% of the food wastage occurs right after it is produced, 21% occurs during the processing, and 14% occurs during the distribution before it even reaches the market. As you can see, the wastage is concentrated upward towards the production and the processing, and not much occurs during the distribution. So the main types of food affected by the wastage is vegetables, cereals, fruits, and even vegetables. Now in this globalized world, we don't really rely on fruit or vegetable seasons. Fruits and vegetables are available in the market all year round, and so we cannot really rely on ambient or proper climate and temperature and weather patterns. So it is crucial to use cold chain systems to simulate a proper environment for the storage of fruits and vegetables. As the distribution channels become more and more complex, we see more and more time being spent during transportation, and if the fruits and vegetables are not cooled properly during this transportation phase, the wastage just goes higher and higher, and that is exactly what we want to decrease. So here we have a case study. It is a very real case study. However, the values taken are hypothetical, though they are realistic. So some farmers were faced with the task of preserving a large quantity of harvested vegetables to prevent spoilage. The initial temperature of the vegetables, which is room temperature, we've taken the average as 25 degrees Celsius. And we want these vegetables to reach a temperature of 10 degrees Celsius, which can be deemed as cool enough to prevent most spoilage. And the rate of cooling in this particular cooling system is 0.099 degrees centigrade per hour. And the constant temperature maintained in the cold storage is 5 degrees Celsius. So here we have applied Newton's law of cooling, which can be represented with this differential equation, which if we differentiate it, we get this equation, where this represents the temperature at time t, and Ts represents the temperature of the surrounding, which is the temperature inside the cold storage. T0 is the temperature at time 0, which is basically the initial temperature. Ts is once again the temperature of the surrounding. E is the mathematical constant. And K is the rate of cooling, which once again depends on the cooling system, the quality of it. And T, the lowercase t, is time. So if we substitute all those values, we get T is equal to roughly 14 hours. Okay, and in our second example, we just tweak the values a little bit. K, instead of 0.099, we've taken it as 0.13, and the initial temperature, the temperature at which the vegetables are at first, when they enter the cooling system, we've taken it to be 20 instead of 25. So this small change in values leads us. So solving this equation gives us with T is equal to roughly 14 hours. And if we just tweak the values a little bit, so instead of the cooling rate being 0.099 degrees Celsius per hour, we take it as just 0.183, and we reduce the initial temperature, which is the temperature in which the vegetables are placed in the cooling system. Instead of 25, if we take it to be just 20, and we plug those values into the equation, we get T is equal to roughly 6 hours. From 14 to 6. The decrease in the time taken to cool the vegetables is 8 hours. So this is just to demonstrate how a few tweaks in quality, a few changes can lead to monumental increase in shelf life. And in this small example, it was 8 hours. I'll be handing it over to Achyut.
So now that we have an idea of how much time it would take for a cold chain to work, we will look into the actual effectiveness of the cold chain and how it would impact us. So, as we all know, a food cold chain is the integrated set of activities undertaken to ensure that perishable food products are kept under the optimum temperature in the supply chain that stretches from freshly harvested products to the end customer. So, a cold chain system has many benefits and can connect local clusters of farmers, growers and fishers with higher value local, national and international markets while simultaneously helping to build the sustainable and resilient food supply system necessary to feed a growing population. It affords market connectivity which incentivizes farmers to raise their output because they will earn more from what they produce. It also allows farmers and growers to transition from growing crops of staples to producing higher value, perishable, micronutrient rich foods such as fresh fruits and vegetables, and it also has the potential to allow higher value to move to rural communities, creating jobs and making the economic growth broader. So now, according to United Nations, some countries here have successfully reduced food waste with effective cold chains. And in Nigeria, cold chains have prevented the spoilage of 42,000 tons of food. And in India, a cold chain pilot project developed by the NCCD reduced food losses in its food supply by 76%. So cold chains also have an environmental benefit as they help reduce the carbon dioxide equivalent greenhouse gas emissions related to food loss. As demand for cold chains increases, deployment of sustainable, low GWP and energy efficient cold systems would be needed to reduce the carbon dioxide equivalent emissions from the cold chain systems themselves. So when it comes to implementing these, there are some solutions that are already available to assist this transition. Now the first one here is assistive zero energy systems such as low cost vegetable storage using evaporative cooling at the farm where climate allows. The second is building design, thermally efficient, well insulated buildings with passive cooling approaches. And insulation is equally important for transportation vehicles here. Best in class equipment. Most refrigeration systems will last 14 to 20 years. Therefore, it is essential that as new systems are deployed in the developing markets, they are of the highest energy efficiency, such as variable speed compressors and lowest GWP refrigerants feasible and with good control systems. Now, when it comes to maintenance, refrigerant leakage rates are high, over 20% leakages per vehicle per year on average, and therefore significant direct emissions as well as increased energy consumption can be avoided with better maintenance practices. So now I would like to hand it over to Vishwas to talk about the economics of the cold chain infrastructure.
Now that we've learned what it takes to make a cold chain in a cold chain system and all the math involved behind it, let us talk about some more realistic aspects. Let's talk about the economics of actually implementing and deploying cold chain systems. Now, firstly, let's address the fact that cold chain infrastructure requires large initial investments, and farmers, especially small farmers, may and will be very hesitant to actually invest. Now, while it is crucial for the government to provide subsidies and loans to these farmers for actually investing in the cold chains, it may be more worthwhile to review some effective cost-cutting methods so that small farmers can actually, without fear, invest in cold chain systems. Now, firstly, let's talk about the most expensive aspect of cold chain systems, which is reefer vehicles. These are trucks with built-in refrigeration units, which use the truck's fuel source as a source of energy for cooling the produce in their trailers. So, for a reference, the most commonly used reefer vehicle in India. The Tata 1512 4200 reefer truck costs roughly 27 lakhs per truck. Okay, so now in second place, a slightly more economically viable option is reefer containers. These are not vehicles; these are just large metal boxes with cooling systems integrated into them, and they use external fuel sources, which can be either diesel or electricity, to fuel them. And the reason these may be more viable is because we will not need to purchase new vehicles altogether. We can integrate them into existing trucks. And once again, for reference, the price of the reefer container will obviously vary from size. So as it varies from 10 feet to 40 feet, the price can vary from 2.5 lakhs to roughly 12 lakhs, which is almost half of what the reefer vehicles cost. Now a third, much more cheaper and less professional, less effective, but a very eco-friendly and budget-friendly method of cooling food can be to use earthen pots made of clay. Now these could be used for storing the produce on the farm site until the trucks come and collect them, or they can also be used in transit, which is a bit more tedious, but it's theoretically possible. And now that we have the economics out of the way, I would like to hand it over to Archit to finish it off with the challenges to developing a sustainable cold chain system.
So now, while cold chain seems like a very good idea to implement, there are certain challenges that come along with that. Let's have a look at those and see how we can further tackle these issues. So firstly, cold chain monitoring is key to minimizing food wastage and improving efficiency. And it also enables streamlining the process from shipping to storage. That way, if there is an issue, we can respond and resolve it immediately. Temperature monitoring will save costs and reduce the impact on the planet. However, in most developing countries, there is limited or even negligible cold equipment or refrigerated transport from harvest to retail point. Where there is equipment, it is often too old or obsolete from industrialized markets, and the focus is often on moving food for export. So some of the key challenges that are faced here are as follows. The inability to trace the food or produce throughout all the stages of the supply chain. The lack of traceability and transparency can increase the risk related to the safety and the integrity of the product. The difficulty in maintaining the safety or quality of products due to poor cold storage or warehousing infrastructure and practices, transportation inefficiencies, weather unpredictability, and so on. The lack of communication between the parties involved across the supply chain, and increasing costs related to fuel and energy prices, manpower, freight costs, and others. So this is how we would like to conclude. While cold chains are a very good solution to saving fruits and vegetables from being wasted, there are a lot of other logistics that are involved, and implementing them fully to the point where we can achieve a position where most, if not all, of the food products that are being wasted today can be reduced to a point where we can save and preserve them for a longer time. This would be a huge breakthrough in technology, and that is what we hope for. With the current challenges, it is not going to be an easy task, but with enough technology and with enough infrastructure, it is definitely going to be happening very soon, and we will definitely see major developments in this sector. Thank you.